is yet another aspect to a living river. In case of Godavari, a seasonal expression of the river. In peak summer months, May, June especially, it is at its ebb, sufficiently sobered down, almost still, as if breathing slowly, just as life is in summer months. By early monsoon, with the first showers, it begins to pick up its life pace. There is little more feeling and verve to the ripples that are formed on the river. And then comes the monsoon period. And not every monsoon does Godavari come. There are shorter spurts of her coming, which people term as Godavari, but the real almost churning like coming in spate is referred to as Pedda Godavari. So for the state and administration, there is a single and singular staccato term, floods, without these inherent ecological dimensions that people perceive. In fact, you can almost tell if you have travelled in these parts and observed closely if this year Pedda Godavari will come. Or it will be a smaller event and they will say, Isari Godari Radandi. That is, this year Godavari will not come. People of Godavari sense these seasonal aspects to the river, making it a truly living entity. It is in the pre-monsoon stillness that the seer mean will be caught by Godavari's tribal women in their saris, again by slow motion as you saw. So there will be two women holding saris neck deep in low river for little less than a minute sometimes to half an hour and an hour sometimes to catch seer mean in their saris, and which is going to be their vegetable in the months of May and June. The fishermen allow the river to breathe and leave her free in months a little before monsoons, June until August and September. They do not fish in these months. They tell me they do this to allow fish to lay their eggs. Fishing in these months is taboo. Much as they earn their livelihoods from fish, no matter what the compulsion of money, they respect their fish and know when not to meddle with fish life cycle. No matter how hard, and it is very hard and harsh, their lives are in this season, where they live on their savings made from 9 months on the river and sometimes 6 months, and the rest of the time they have to live on their savings. So what makes a river a living river is these relational aspects to a community, ecological diversity, constant flow, but a rhythm and pace typical of the season and the physiogeographical contour. A living river touches cultures, people, seasons, highs and lows, has its summers and winters and monsoons, and colors and shades in every season. When it is dammed, it becomes part of the forced universal. The fields in the command area are always pumped with water from the system, no matter what the mood or pace of the river. The crops too will be universal, single-dimensional, monocrops, paddy, sugarcane, tobacco, requiring water at certain levels without which they cannot thrive. And they are always inundated. And if changes are made, the crops can't manage it. In terms of changes made on a permanently inundated paddy fields forcibly by policy, like they'll say Shri policy, system of rice intensification. The people in the Nagarjuna Sagar command area told me these crops cannot live with less water anymore. Neither are they strong nor is the soil strong enough to do it. So when the river is controlled within a universal system and structure, even agrarian patterns become universal. No fallows are permitted in a commerce-driven regime, a system that constantly demands return on investment from a constantly active market that never takes rest. A market supplying all kinds of food in all seasons. There is no concept anymore of seasonal fruits in global supermarket chains. The river dam becomes a matter of storage with concepts signifying death, such as dead storage. And release is based not on properties of a season, but on politics of usage and access. And it does not allow space for some fluid, yet deeply bound histories on the river, such as that of the fishing community's histories, the tribal histories, being based on forests, moving histories such as those of the nomadic hunter-gatherers who've nearly disappeared. It is a mainstream universal history and predominance of one kind of landscape over all the others, a land-based landscape. In this universality, concepts of R&R are couched, which is problematic. As one fisherman, Malladi Posi, asked me philosophically of the non-existence of his community in this Polavaram R&R, he said, Godavari ki Godavari istara andi vallu, that is, will they give Godavari for Godavari? a pun on the land for land demands. For him and his community, it is the river which is their land. And speaking of fallows, the colonial period saw the birth of a system that demanded returns on every infrastructure built by them, especially with regard to irrigation system. And they did not, it disturbed them a lot when they saw that there were a number of plows lying idle in a particular season. So the perception of the people and state shows us different rivers and worldviews. Thus, when for people it is Godavari comes, goes, Godavari comes, stays for 3 days and leaves, never destroyed our homes. And the mangroves, people in the mangroves are not in the submergence zone, but they depend on the Godavari's coming for the mangroves to thrive, because as you may all know, mangroves thrive on both fresh water as well as, salt water. So unless the Godavari comes, the health of the mangrove suffers. So for people, the economics of Godavari's movement is linked to their livelihoods and rooted in everyday concerns. If the river stops to flow once it is dammed, there is no economic movement for the marginalized. And for them, from then on, it is a race of the exclusives. Do I have some more time? So I'll just need to mention here that even in other cultures there is an idea of floods that people have. Bimal Kanti Paul writes about the idea of floods in the Yamuna flood plain in Bangladesh. I quote, "It is evident from the field survey that all respondents of the study villages refer to annual flooding either as Borsha or Bonna. The former is a normal inundation which is crucial for production of oats and almond rice. This type of flood is perceived as a benevolent agent providing sustenance to the farmers and thus accepted and much anticipated. Usually in a year of normal flood, minimal damages to crops occur and farmers are able to harvest all of their oats and almond rice. Floods that rise 8 feet and above broadcast almond fields but do not overtop the village mounds or homestead lands, and they are called Barsha," unquote. So coming to an entirely different area, the Kadapa-Kurnool Canal, which was built in between 1863 and 1870 by a Dutch company for navigation and later converted into an irrigation project. In 1955, the government of Andhra Pradesh renovated it with some lining work. In 1997, the Japan Bank for Irrigation Corporation gave financial assistance for what is called the modernization of Kadapa-Kurnool Canal project, KC Canal project, and major construction activities were completed by 2005. Rupees 1,100 crores were spent on this. Finally, what happened in 2009? While nature took its course as it had done all along, the technical details of control and release took its toll. As Kurnool went down inundated by water, some said it was once in 100 years, even it had never happened before. This was in October 2009. And that while natural events like rains filling rivers with water happen, what turns them into calamities and disasters is politics of management and ostensibly termed flood control. So it lent truth to the fact that not all problems in this world can be fixed by the technos. In technical terms, the politics of Cusack's control in between 3 states, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, made people unsuspecting victims of this disaster. So in such a system, floods means a break in the status quo, in the constant demand and supply paradigm, and hence it is undesirable. Hence wasting into sea argument, which negates the diverse purposes of a living river, as though the river's job is only to either water heavily pesticide-laden fields connected to a marketplace, or to pump supply to growing demands of industry, paper mills, thermal power projects, hydel power generated towards a certain purpose. There are no ecological purposes for its existence and no perceiving the process in the interconnectedness of season. And I found a profound depth in fisherman Malladi Arjaya in Vadapalli, who I had met in 2010 June. In his younger days, Malladi Arjaya had taken quite a few adventures down Godavari, or Gangamma as he called her, as he fished in her waters, not caring for boundaries of state or district or regions. He went where Godavari led him. That explains his perspective, expansive, of fishing where Godavari takes him. Or in other words, that the river and fish in it decide his direction. until someday he decides it's time to stay back and settle down, as he did in Vadapalli. So never mind that the fish in Godavari waters on this side have actually shrunk in numbers. But Ajaya has a home there and a family to look after. So talking to him as the full moon rises on banks of Godavari with one or two fishermen on their Nava laying nets at night, it was like getting enlightened with the whole philosophy of the river and fish and life, and the larger changes perceptible only to someone so closely tied to it. There was a simple philosophy of life in what he said that evening, which was as good as any expert's perspective on its ecology of rivers and lives that depend on it. Malladi Ajaya said to me, "Those days were good. Now it feels like this occupation has been hit by drought. There has been a sharp decline in the birth of fish in Godavari water. There aren't enough eggs now. There's a decline in the birth of fish in Godavari water. They keep the Dauleshwaram barrage near Rajamandri gates closed and open them only during Pedda Godavari. If they would open the gates in normal times, there would have been ample fish eggs and prawns as well. If Godavari comes, there'll be lots of fish too. When the fish is pregnant, it needs air and it needs to move. When Godavari comes, it helps the fish turn and move around and lay its eggs, and new fish are born. Fish eggs are laid near pebbles, stones, etc. They do not lie on it. With floods, these eggs are washed and new fish are born, which move along with the flood waters. And after Enabayar Godavari, the river was full of fish. Where do we have that kind of Godavari anymore? The water has to go to sea. Are they allowing it? Farmers and government only think of their interests and building canals and dams. Where is the water going to sea as it used to? How will new fish be born? After a second of silence,